Good morning and welcome to the webinar. My name is Sarah Skinner and I'm here on behalf of the DIA. I normally work in the background, but I've been drafted in to help host this webinar today. Let me introduce you to Dean Sandiford and Paul Bishop. They're from Driving Test Success and they're going to be delivering this presentation for you. This is on the dangers of distracted driving, a very important topic, and I'm sure this presentation will be quite eye-opening for many of you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to them. But before I do so, they will be happy to have questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat box and we'll go through them after they've finished their presentation. So welcome, Paul, welcome, Dean, and over to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everybody. I'll just start sharing the presentation so we can move forward. Hoping everyone can see my screen as I'm sharing it there. Oh, sharing the wrong one. Good start there to the webinar. Here we go. There we go. That's much better. So welcome everybody to the dangers of distracted driving. Hopefully what you take away from this webinar is a couple of points that you can show to your trainees and instruct them on the different types of distractions, and also the best way to manage the vehicle as they're driving. We do use a lot of training in our industry, which is predominantly LGV, but we do obviously we're well known for car as well. But this is one of the most requested pieces of training that we pass on to our network. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to any questions at the end. Now, here we go. So the aim of today is to provide knowledge and understanding and the consequences of distractions whilst you're driving. Now, distractions do come in many different forms and from many different mindsets as well. So as we go through the objectives, we'll be talking about what is distracted driving and gaining a clear understanding of what constitutes as distracted driving, various different types of distractions, and some hopefully eye-opening statistics about the impact on the road safety, the science behind what we've produced today for you, and identifying what common distractions there are, whether it be mobile phone, in-car activities, or external factors like billboards, or before you've gotten into the car. Maybe you're anxious about going to an interview or anxious about doing a webinar like we all are here today. I know I'm a little bit anxious myself, being the first one for the DIA. I've done many of these, but this is my first one for the DIA. So hopefully it'll go as well as all the other ones. But we also talk about the legal and financial impacts as well. So we talk about the penalties and the fines and the long-term financial repercussions of what distracted driving can bring. We'll also talk about some practical solutions. Towards the end of the webinar, there are a list of different distractions and solutions that we can put in place, or what we can help learners to put in place so they are less distracted. So what are the definitions and the different types of distractions, and then the statistics? So we're going to be talking about visual distractions, manual distractions, and then some cognitive distractions as well. And they can vary from basic taking your eyes off the road to look at the mobile, or just adjusting the volume on the music that you're playing because you found a nice song that you want to play, you want to ramp up the music. So we're going to be talking about those. Manual distractions, again, taking your hands off the wheel. This could be texting or even eating, and sometimes highlighted in the news, people shaving their beard or putting their makeup on whilst they're driving or stuck in traffic. Then we go on to the cognitive distractions. And like I was saying before, these are where your mind's not really focused on the driving, and you're maybe in a deep conversation on the phone or with people inside inside the vehicle. You could be daydreaming, or you could be preoccupied with personal thoughts, things that might be going on in your personal life, and uh, what you might be thinking of coming home to in the evening, or whether you're going out in the evening as well. You may be thinking about those. So we're going to go and delve deep into those different types of issues. Just a bit of an update on the latest figures from the Department for Transport in 2024. There was an estimated of 50,000 instances of drivers using handheld phones every day, with the proportion of van drivers breaking the law 3 times that of car drivers. So it is still an issue. It is something that we still need to teach to our learners. It is a very important issue, and especially with the new cameras that are out these days, they can take pictures of you doing all sorts in your vehicles as you're driving. So another statistic was 500,000 of motorists are still driving without wearing a seatbelt. Um, Obviously, there are major impacts if you are in an accident or an incident and you're not wearing your seatbelt. And 4.8% of vehicle passengers were observed not wearing a seatbelt. So it is important for you as a driver to pass on that knowledge to the people who you have in your car who are possibly not drivers as well. So there's a lot to take away from this. And in this presentation, and I do believe it's there available on the DIA portal for you to be able to download. I've also included quite a lot of areas where you can get additional information or additional help or guidance, and these will vary from drink drive rehabilitation, car seats, child car seats, motoring offences. So there is a list as well on this particular presentation in this slide that I'm showing you now of various different places that you can go and get some additional help or advice. Obviously, ourselves at Driving Test Success, we do help all our customers. So if you do have any inquiries, we do respond to those as well with a good team of people that we have working with us, but also the DIA are there as well to help out with any queries or questions that you do have. But I thought if I include a couple of these links of where I found useful information and statistics, it would be prudent to pass them on to you as well. So there's a good list of government websites that you can go to get that additional information that you need. Moving on, so how does the brain process distractions? Now, this is really an interesting subject because as you're driving the car, not only have you got the normal distractions in front of you on the road as you're driving. We're all used to these when we're talking about vulnerable road users out on the road, or depending on what type of vehicle, can you go down that road? Is it safe to go over that bridge? Those type of things. So you've not only got those types of distractions, but then you've also got the other distractions that you bring with you in the car, like we were talking about before: texting, eating, drinking, using a hands-free phone. Even though you may be following the law and using a hands-free phone, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to start creating some distractions. And there are studies that do show that whilst using a hands-free phone, it is the equivalent or coming close to equivalent of drink driving and the use of drugs while driving as well. So it is a very, very big topic. Eating and drinking, again, this can decrease your reaction time to something that's happening, even if you're eating or just taking a sip of your water or coffee that you've got going. And I thought I'd include these into the presentation. And if we go on to the first type, the human brain and multitasking, if you put a lot of these elements together, whether you're eating, drinking, and concentrating on the road, you're heavily increasing the chances of being distracted even more as you're driving down the road. And the brain's not equipped to effectively multitask during complex activities like driving. Now, as we become more experience with driving, a lot of these things become second nature in our brain, and we'll be going on to that further as we get into this webinar. But as you add more and more distractions to that, the brain can effectively get confused and engaging in secondary tasks such as texting or even just doing some adjustments in the car, whether it's the volume or the seat, as you're driving, does increase those reaction times significantly, as you can see with some of the as the stats that I've put in there. The cognitive overload increases and the likelihood of errors and accidents does increase with that. So distractions significantly impair reaction times. So whilst you're driving and you receive a text, that can lead to a slower reaction time suddenly. And in sudden events that happen, longer glances away from the road. So you've received that text. You may not be interacting it with your hands or anything like that, but you've received that text. You could then sway into a different lane. So what I mean by that is as you're driving, if you notice something that's happening alongside the road or to the left of your vehicle, you might have your phone on the left seat, to say, for instance, you would navigate to the left-hand side because your brain navigates or tells you to navigate to what you're looking at that particular time. So, and the longer you do that, the longer you will move into that direction. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And eating and drinking, when I was looking through the stats, I was really surprised that it came up to 44% slower, which is a huge increase compared to the other ones, such as texting and using a hands-free phone. So I thought it was very prudent that we put this in there into this webinar so we can further discuss it. So mobile phones, texting, calls, using apps, passengers in a car, in-car activities, external distractions we talked about before, could be a billboard, scenery, more something that you would recognize more as you're driving, incidents and accidents on the road. So you may have seen the slowdown in traffic and you're wondering what's happening up ahead. And it could be just because a vehicle's broken down in one of the lanes, or there's been a major incident on the other side. And other people, as they're driving, in terms of rubbernecking as they're going along, and they're watching and they're interested in what's happening on the other side. And humans naturally are inquisitive and they will want to know what's going on. So it's a natural habit that comes to us more for some people than other people. And we'll go and talk about those as we get into this. Using a mobile phone while driving, obviously we know it's a distraction. Some of the stats that came through in the UK, 55% of drivers under 25 admit to using their phones without a hands-free technology, which is still an alarming figure. And this is the highest rate it has been in the 8 years that they have been monitoring it. In autumn 2023, for instance, 0.3% of all vehicles driven in England were observed using a mobile phone while driving. And this is during the week where these stats have come from. So the figures are still showing that it is an issue. And I think it's very important as we instruct our learners and their training. And it doesn't matter whether they're bike, car, LGV, bus, doesn't matter. We still need to reinstill those behaviors and how to stop those behaviors within the car. In-car activities, Obviously, we've talked about setting setting the radio volume, setting your navigation systems, eating and drinking, very, very high up there on things that we need to teach people, get them to move away from. Having passengers in the car, engaging with conversation. If you're engaging with conversations with people in the car, it's just the same stats as what it is engaging with people on the phone, whether you're using a hands-free or not. Same principles apply. We've talked about external distractions, and we're going to go on to the cognitive distractions. And this could be daydreaming, it could be stress, you could be preoccupied with things going on in your personal life or at work. You could be thinking of that meeting that you're going to. And these are all distractions that we need to help our learners with and help them recognize these and how to enjoy that driving that they're undertaking at that time, rather than thinking about things that can wait until they've got out of the car, basically. As we move on, we're going to be talking about some of the legal and financial consequences, the legal penalties for distracted driving. If you're found, obviously, using a handheld mobile device while driving, we know that is illegal now, and hopefully the point has got across to the millions of drivers out in the UK. But remember, once they've passed their test, they don't update their knowledge. They don't update their requirements or changes to the law. So it's up to us as instructors to let them know where to go to get those updates as they go through the years of driving. Now, handheld devices, that's a fixed penalty points, 6 points added to your driving license, £200 fine. And if you haven't had your license for a long time, so if it's less than 2 years and you accumulate those 6 points, it's an automatic license revocation. So you're going to have to redo your test and get that license again. So it's important that we explain these things to our learners. And whilst explaining those things, we need to explain why. So it's not just the legal consequences or financial consequences of using a handheld phone. We also need to explain to them what happens whilst they're using that handheld device. Where their thoughts are distracted to, and where their vision is then distracted to. So hopefully you'll be able to pass on some of these ideas and instructions that we've put down into this. So some of the strategies we'll be going on to, and some of the technology solutions, even though they are solutions, I know when I'm talking to my staff members who are out on the road, I'm not I won't say confident, but I'm not comfortable with them using their hand-free systems to give me a call, give me an update whilst they're driving on the road. I always tell my staff, if you want to give me an update, give it to me before you start driving. Get in your car, prepare yourself, wind down from that meeting, call the people that you want to. You can still use your hands-free, obviously, whilst you're in the car, but do it while you're parked. Do it before you set off onto your next journey. Take that moment to breathe and decompress from the meetings that you've had, or if you're going to a meeting, get there early. Sit there, relax for half an hour, speak to the people that you want to speak to at that time. And if you pass on those not only to your learners, but also if you do manage staff or you do have colleagues, pass on that information of how best you go about your day, and pass on those safe practices that you want to not only give your learners, but give your colleagues or your spouse, your wife, your husband, or even your children as they're getting out into the car. So there's a lot of things you can do before you set off on that journey. And obviously, as we go through our training with learners, we always show them how to set up the sat nav to get from one place to another. But adjusting the climate controls, making sure, especially these days with the kind of weather that we've got coming through, making sure that the car is comfortable, or you know what settings you want it to be at before you set off, and go about your journey. I always turn off all external distractions. So I have a I have a nice car. It comes with a very clever technology where it sends these text messages onto my screen as I'm driving. But I place that on the do not disturb, and you can do that. So showing these type of settings to learners, or if you can't show them, at least go through them and explain them, of what they can do when they get a new car, working out what that car can do, and definitely turning on the do not disturb does work for me. Sometimes I do commute for a 2 hour journey, and I do that a couple of times in the week, and I don't want to be interrupted on those 2 hours. But when I turn off the notifications, I can still allow calls to come through. So I'm minimizing the distractions before I set off, and that's how I set up my vehicle. But I also stop along the route, and I do stop at the services. I do get a coffee, and I do get a sandwich for when I arrive at work, because I'm always early. So I've got a nice little sandwich for myself when I get to work. But I do make sure that they're placed in a particular place in the car where they're not going to roll around and cause a distraction for me later on. And loose objects, again, simple things and little things like this, if you explain them to learners, they can understand why they will become a distraction for you as you then drive in the vehicle. The other thing as well that I do like to pass on to my colleagues and my kids as well is just keeping that composure, maintaining composure. We all have, or we all can have stressful lives. We've got a lot of things going on in life, and when I set off on my journey, I try to leave all those away from me until I've arrived at my destination, or when I get back home, and I'll sort them out then after work. So I think it's important that we talk about these things and we give them tips of what's best to do. Now, we do know that we've got, when we've talked about them, technology advances, and we've talked about me setting up my car, but one thing that we don't always explain to people is these new cars are coming up with monitoring systems. So your car is effectively a bit much like everything else, where you've got Alexa and Google, and the theory of everyone's listening to you. Your car's doing the same thing. Your car is monitoring the way you drive, and the car will tell you how you can improve your driving. So it is important that we go through the car and setting up the car for when we're setting off with learners. Then we go on to talk about the external factors that we bring with us. So these we need to create that distraction-free environment. A lot of us have kids or pets, and there are laws that we need to abide by in securing pets or securing your children in the vehicle. Now, children and pets, they have no idea what any of these laws are, or any of the reasons why they should be in this vehicle securely. These are the things that we need to explain to them, but we also need to tell our learners this as well. So when they are bringing external factors into the car, they know why it's best to secure them in a safe manner, especially dogs or pets, rather than them running around that vehicle. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider when we're talking distractions within the vehicle. Now, we do have within this presentation a couple of videos. I'm not going to play the videos in this webinar, but they are embedded within the presentation. So when you do download the presentation, you'll be able to watch these videos. And the only reason I don't want to play them today is because not knowing the group who we're talking to, I don't know your circumstances, and I don't want to uh, affect your mental health today. And so I just want to give you the choice of watching these on the next two slides that we go through rather than me playing them out to you. One is about the tragic loss of a young lady, and this was back in January 2024. And this was in Plymouth, and they were just going about their business on a normal day. Was unfortunately struck by a bus. And this is just, it doesn't show you the incident, but it just goes through the effects of that incident with the family members, their friends, and stuff like that. And I think it's important to include these in here, and you use your own judgment whether you want to show these to learners, just to show the severity of what can happen. Because they may not have been involved in or know about any of these incidents in their lifetime, sometimes being young drivers, but I think it's especially important to um, give them an understanding of what can happen. But then what happens to the driver? This particular one was sentenced to 2 years in prison and then disqualified from driving for 6 years after that. And then there's another video as well on the other one, and I think that's I included this one because it's a foreign video. I think it's over in America or Canada, like that, just to show the strengths that it's not just the UK that this happens to. These are all humans around the whole world where we're seeing these type of incidents. So nobody is how can I put it? Nobody, everybody, it could happen to everybody. So nobody is free from this not happening, and it could be an accident. They may not have had any intention of doing these things, but a distraction can cause these. So I'll just flick through these particular ones and move off from them. And I just go to slide 12. There we go. And this will just skip those particular two because they are being videos. They are very impactful on people as they watch them. So again, apologies, I'm not showing that here in the webinar, but they are there for you to look at. So we talk about eliminating distractions and is a text worth a life? Just again, a follow-up from the videos before. But one of the questions that I do ask my learners on a regular basis, is it worth looking at that text? Is it worth taking that call? Do you need to take that call? Do you need to look at what's going on the other side of the motorway rather than concentrating on what's in front of you and going about your business as normal? Do you really need to know what's happening outside of the car or in your life elsewhere whilst you're driving? And the majority of the times the answer is no. And if we try to look at our life and try to bring it into more of a balance and calm that life down, the things that we can leave behind and tackle later rather than taking them with us on the car journey, the better our lives will be. So we all have a responsibility as instructors, and I do like this particular picture that I've put on here because it shows you are passing that responsibility on to the next driver. When you pass those keys to your learners, you're passing on that responsibility to them. And this is one of the most important learning or training sessions you can do with the learner. As you pass those keys on to them, you say to them, I'm passing these keys on to you. Yeah, this is now your responsibility. I'm there with you, of course, I'm your instructor, but this is now your responsibility. make sure you go through your checks before we start off. And I encourage taking on that responsibility. And I use the word responsibility with my learners on a regular basis. And because I want to instill, they have a responsibility of taking that vehicle out onto that road. And they have that personal commitment with me for whenever they're taking that vehicle out on the road, that they're going to do it in a safe manner. So it's important that when we pass those keys on, we pass that weight of responsibility with it as well. Then we go on to the cockpit exercises as you get into the vehicle, what you set up beforehand, and then I go on to talk about the distractions of the driving and how is it preventable? Asking the questions, why do you need that phone there? What is its purpose whilst you're in the vehicle with me, let alone while you're in the vehicle on your own or with another person? So as I pass on those keys, I'm trying to eliminate that distraction and engage that responsibility with the learner. Now, there's a lot of things within this presentation. We've talked about the resources. You'll find on this particular slide, there are some resources where you can go away and look at different promotions that are going on, Road Safety Week, for instance, vehicle management apps that you can download and use, especially for young new drivers. They can download an app that helps with their insurance, using that app with the learner, interacting with them and going through how can we improve your driving on that app. There's a lot of things that we can encourage learners to take up and get involved with using new technology and understanding why it could be a good thing for them. There are also things where in the community you can engage within the community on particular events, road safety events, workshops, campaigns. I'm a big fan with my learners of not just using the vehicle as the training room. I also invite them onto not webinars, but online training where people can come and I will discuss various different subjects depending on what I've set up for that week. And it could be breakdown procedures. It could be your cockpit procedures. It could be the multiple choice question or the hazard perception videos that they're doing. So I do different sessions with them as a group, and I use that peer-to-peer interaction with them. So it's not just coming from me. Other people are talking about what they can do to eliminate those distractions. But as I encourage those learners, I instill that call to action as an instructor to say, this is my purpose. When I'm passing you these keys, not only am I your instructor, but I'm passing on that responsibility. So when you pass your test, you take that responsibility with you. So now we're going on to the various different distractions that we have, and also come with some helpful, useful tips as we go through each one of these. And as you can see the list here, it is an extensive list. I've just picked a few things that I thought were pertinent to this discussion, but the list goes on and on and on. So we're just going to be talking about a few of them and each one of these points as we go through. So here are the stats that you can see on the screen, and these are just the ones that are visual distractions. So these are just taking your eyes off the road. Amongst young drivers, and that's the first one, as I talked about before, 0.3% of all vehicle drivers in England are still using their mobile phone while driving. This was obviously the stats that were done on a weekday basis. I guess the government only work on the weekday when they're doing these stats. I don't know, but that's where we have them. But young drivers are impacted a lot, so we do need to ensure that we do pass on that information to them, and we also pass on the impact of reaction times as well. So within these slides, you'll see when you download them, there are notes on there. And using a mobile phone, as we talked about on one of the previous ones, reduces that reaction time by up to 30%. So, and this is comparable, like we were saying before, of the legal alcohol limit. And if you put it in that context with a learner, it gives a little bit more gravitas on that learner understanding why you're telling them this, what the consequences. We talked about the videos before, but between 2014 and 2019, we had 133 fatalities, 446 serious accidents, and this is in the UK, and all directly linked to drivers just being distracted by their phones. So that's one major incident every 3 days. That is a significant statistic. And if you pass that on to learners, they will better understand why you're telling them this. And it's important that we discuss driver behavior with learners. And as the last one found there, 14.4% of drivers were involved in some form of concurrent activity whilst driving. So we do need to talk to learners about distractions whilst they're driving. Eating and drinking, smoking, adjusting controls. Again, we've talked about these personal grooming, whether it's makeup, brushing hair, shaving. I've seen them all whilst I've been on the roads for the decades that I've had my license. Reaching for items, and we've all done these little things. And usually, when I do them, usually after I've done something, I think to myself, "Oh, really? I shouldn't have done that." But I'll make a mental note so I can put it in my presentation later. But then again, it's a knock-on effect. I'm then thinking about work. I'm thinking about other things. And you just got to come into that mentality of, right, let's just engage with the driving. I was driving down to work this week. So on Tuesday, I was going down to work. So again, it's a 2-hour drive. It's the first time when I got to work, I realized it was the first time that I've driven to work and there's not been any roadworks at all on that route. And I then shared that information with my colleague. And but it was as I got to the destination, I instantly thought about that, and I didn't even realize as I was driving to work that those roadworks have gone, because Christmas and New Year I've not driven down to work for 3 weeks. So the first time I'm going back in the new year, I've not realized until I actually got down to work that all those roadworks that have been there for the 2 years have actually gone. So it is important that you take this on board and you pass it on to learners, your experiences. Drivers who eat or drink while driving, 3.6 times more likely to be involved in an accident compared to those who do not engage in these distractions. So 3.6 times might not sound a lot, but when you look at the stats, it is a huge increase. And I hate to say it, but HGV drivers are unfortunately some of the ones that are the most risk, because 33% of those drivers do eat or unwrap food whilst they're driving. Smoking while driving, we all know that it is a distraction, and this can be either smoking or vaping, lighting up a cigarette, opening up the window, blowing the fumes out of the car, whether it's vaping or smoking, doesn't matter. It's still the same. They still have that distraction as you go. And as you go through them, each one does have that legal implication as well, if you are found to do certain distractions whilst driving. Daydreaming is one of the big ones for me. Daydreaming, and we all do it when we get in the car. I don't know if you've ever got to a destination and thought, oh, that actually went quick. I don't even remember half of um, the drive that I've done. So there's a lot of things that do happen. Mind wandering, it is a significant impact on driving within these slides. There are some hints and tips of how you can limit those and instruct your learners on how to limit those. We've talked about conversations with passengers. Again, hands-free devices always comes up there. Listening to music is um, is a distraction, but we don't want to prevent people doing those things because it is an enjoyable thing whilst you're driving. But just limit what you do with that whilst you're listening to music. A lot of drivers do go past, and you can hear them singing and enjoying the music as they're driving down the road. But it's important that we explain to learners that it is a distraction in the end. Emotional distress, mental workload. Again, I've put in here a few of the things that you can help learners reduce those things. But your mind wandering, estimates indicate that drivers spend about 20 to 50% of their time thinking about other things whilst they're driving. Again, that can impact their hazard perception as they're or response times as they're driving down the roads. Going on to auditory distractions again, as we talked about, loud music, passengers, notifications, external sounds, horns. Whenever you drive past a car and the horn goes, it's good when you're with a learner. It's good in the sense of if they hear the horn of another vehicle, explaining why has that person pressed the horn and what are they trying to indicate and when and how you should use the horn and what its purpose is there for. So a lot of these things, obviously, we go through that type of training with them, but they are big distractions, not just at the time, but then afterwards for learners. So if someone's used their horn against the learner as they're under instruction from yourselves, it's the consequences of afterwards. What are they still thinking about? Are they nervous from that? Is the driver still behind them? So all these then become a distraction. So it's important that you explain these to learners once they've had something like this happen to them, what they can do to mitigate those uh, those incidents that happen to them out on the road. Physical distractions, again, before we talked about unrestrained pets, children, again, getting into the cockpit of the vehicle and setting up that seating before you set off. One thing we haven't talked about is illness or pain. And if you are undergoing some sort of medical treatment, asking someone to help you get to those appointments is essential. Rather than just going on your own, not just because you're in charge of a vehicle, but for your mental state as well, and having that person with you. So again, within here, there's some mitigation strategies that you can think about: planning ahead, eating and drinking before you get into the vehicle, not rushing your morning rituals where you're having a shave or preparing yourself for work. These are all listed within this presentation for you to help you out. As we come on to today's weather, we've got snow outside my house. Don't know about anybody elsewhere within the country. I know where I live, this particular road isn't gritted, but the main roads are. So talking about weather conditions with your learners, your pupils, and the hidden road conditions if you've got weather like this. Sometimes you can't see potholes. If there's more, if your area is prevalent to flooding and the roads are covered with water, you won't see those potholes. So it's important in these particular weather conditions that you and not distracted, and you limit those distractions as much as possible so you can concentrate on the road. Using the sun visors, low sunshine in this particular month where the sun is low, putting the sun visor down, and also instructing them on the sunglasses and the use of sunglasses. We've talked about technology and the distractions that it can bring. I've included a few stats here for you so you can explain these to learners as well. We talked about a couple of them before, but the interesting one was that I thought of putting here was it's not just the UK, it is the whole world that this happens to. And 23% of serious accidents globally are linked to distractions caused by smartphones. I think is a really impactful statement if you pass that on to the learner. The other things as well that we get are overconfidence, and some days we're having a good day, especially with young drivers. You can become overconfident with that particular route that you're on. It's a regular route. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'll be fine. I've done this route many times." But those routes can change daily. So it's important that we explain those to individuals and to learners. So to not get confident or lackadaisical on a particular route that they're going on a regular basis. No matter what route they're doing, they still need to prepare themselves and limit those distractions even on a route that they do on a regular basis. Like I was explaining to you before, when I went to work and that 2 hour drive, I realized when I got there, no roadworks. And that was quite impactful to me. I think as myself as an experienced driver, yet that particular 2 hour drive is a regular commute for me on a regular basis every week. And to realize that once I get there was quite impactful. As we come to the end of the presentation, we've talked about individual distractions. What I wanted to make sure that I did get across, like I said at the beginning, was when you combine all these things together, they increase and multiply as you go on. So when you get more than one sense being taken with a distraction from your driving, you are increasing that risk of an accident or an incident taking place. So the more we can reduce, the less issues we're going to have whilst we're out on the road. The one thing to take away from this presentation is moving forward and taking those steps forward. Again, the call to action with the learners is educating them on distractions and how those distractions can impact not only their life, but the life of the others that are out on those roads as well. And I'm hoping you have all taken something from this webinar to present to your learners or yourself or your family members or your colleagues. And again, if you download the presentation, there are some useful guides in the notes there, other that I couldn't present today because of the time restrictions that we have. We only have an hour. And I do want to get to some questions when you're ready and you're free to do so. Thank you for listening, and I'll go back and have a look at the chat to see if there's anything in there.
Thank you, Dean. That was wonderful. We've had some comments within the chat from Helen earlier on, where you were talking about visual distractions, and she was just emphasizing that obviously, as we know, your hands will follow where your eyes are looking. So, it's taking your eyes off the road is going to lead to your car going off the road on occasions if you're not fully conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah,
So thank you very much for that, Helen.
thank
Um,
you.
we also had Teresa noticed on your presentation that one of your images was a left-hand drive vehicle.
Oh, was it? Did I
It
not know?
was. Again, very, very observant driving instructors, they'll notice all of these things, so that's probably just something you might want to look at. Um, Jill has asked whether or not the presentation can be downloaded afterwards in the DIA members area. I'm hoping very much that's the case. This recording will go into the members area, and I'm hoping that alongside that they'll be able to put the presentation in. But I can't guarantee that because I don't know for sure, but that's certainly what I'll ask them to do. We did have a couple of other comments. One was from Edward, who was saying that there's some very good resources with the Honest Truth. For those of you who know about the Honest Truth program, that they do cover distractions as well, which is an excellent source of resources for your pupils. Very, very good to have a look at that if you haven't yet. Where else did we go? We had Teresa, who many, many years ago, she was pulled over by the police on a motorway for singing. Now, obviously, whoever the policemen were had noticed that she was distracted, or maybe she had actually um, taken a decision on the motorway caused by her being distracted by that singing, and had obviously pulled over and advised her. So, very interesting with that. And lastly, we had Helen, who was saying, about planning, especially in this weather. She had her pupil note that bus routes are the ones that most likely get gritted first. So when choosing and planning your drive for the day, to use those bus routes, it is very advisable. So thank you very much for that, Helen. With all of this, we as driving instructors, it's very important that we make our pupils aware of these moments, because throughout their driving career, they will be distracted. No two ways about it. Things will happen that will distract them. But if they're consciously aware that this can happen, they're more likely to mitigate against it. If they're not aware that this can happen, that moment of distraction, if it happens to align, I think it was Reason's cheese, wasn't it? I mean, if anyone wants to look that up, where all the holes align at the same moment. So if something else happens within that moment of distraction, then you've got an incident, or you've got a fatality or an accident. So very, very important things that we pass on to our learner drivers in whatever way that we do that. So thank you ever so much, guys. I'm really appreciative of you spending your free time doing this. And on behalf of everyone at the DIA, thank you ever so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate being here. And I'll take those comments of the Honest Truth and the bus routes as well, and include them into this as I update it as I go forward. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you all
guys.
so much for
I'll end this
attending. Thank you.
recording now. Thank you.